Welcome to the Circle of Influence webinar series. This series highlights an incredible collection of conversations and thoughtful discussions between Saddlefit for Life's founder and certified master saddler Jochen Schleese and equine professionals that have dedicated their careers to optimizing the health, well-being, and performance of the horses in their care. Throughout this series, you're going to meet a variety of experts, each playing a vital role in the horse's circle of care. At the heart of it all is the horse, with every professional contributing to their physical and emotional welfare, overall health, and performance. A recurring theme in this series is Saddlefit, because a healthy, well-cared-for horse experiences changes in their back, which means regular Saddlefit evaluation and adjustments are essential. Each professional's work influences these changes and highlights the importance of maintaining proper saddle fit for the horse's comfort and performance. Our invited experts come from all areas of the equine industry, from surgeons to nutritionists, body workers, and trainers. They share practical insights, tips, and strategies you can implement to support your horse's health and well-being at home. Join us and explore the full circle of care, because a truly healthy horse is the result of a team of dedicated professionals working together. Welcome to the first episode of the Circle of Influence webinar series. I'm thrilled to be joined here today by Jochen Schleese, certified master saddler and founder of Saddlefit for Life. And also here today is a very special guest, Dr. Jose Castro, equine surgeon, acupuncturist, chiropractor, and owner of Davie County Large Animal Hospital in North Carolina. Thank you both so much for being here with us today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation, and I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves in just a moment, but I would first like to tell our viewers just what the focus of today's conversation is going to be, because we're going to talk about the intersection of saddle fit and veterinary care, and we're going to look at how ill-fitting saddles contribute to musculoskeletal dysfunction, to back pain, and performance decline. I think between a certified master saddler and an equine surgeon who specializes in musculoskeletal health and performance horses, we're in for quite an interesting conversation. Dr. Castro, why don't we start with you? Thank you again for being here today. Could you briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and about the work that you do?
Yes. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. Very quickly, I'm originally from Ecuador. I decided to become a veterinarian when I was 7 years old. Never changed my mind. And then I graduated in late 2000. And then since 2012, I am a board certified surgeon who owns Davie County Large Animal Hospital in Mocksville, North Carolina. And my hospital, it's definitely geared to sports medicine. And one of the things that we see on daily basis is horses with back pain or back problems, to the point that has become one of my personal areas of interest. In addition to being a boarded surgeon, also I am certified in acupuncture and chiropractics. I believe that between the three areas, I can help a lot of patients, but I am not a saddle fitter. And truly, it's an area that it's a key component to the success of what we're trying to achieve.
Thank you so much for that introduction and for spending some time with us today to talk about this topic. Before we go further into what exactly it is that you're seeing frequently in your practice, I'm going to ask our other guest here today, Jochen Schleese, to briefly introduce himself. Jochen, most of our viewers likely know who you are as the founder of Saddlefit for Life and a saddle maker, but perhaps you could give us a little bit more background about yourself and what originally inspired you to dedicate your life to saddlefit and saddlefit education.
Yes. So I got to go a little bit back by saying that my passion, I grew up with horses, was always anatomy. And I was very sure I'd become a medical doctor or veterinarian. Obviously, I leaned towards veterinarian because I was always with horses. But my uncle's side, they're all physicians and doctors. And I thought, oh, that's so cool what they do. Little problem, I spent too much time in the barn. I competed it a lot. And I didn't spend enough time in the books. So I had to learn and get my grades upgraded to go to night school. And by that time, Dad says, you have to do a job on the side. So become a saddle maker just to bridge the time to get my grades up. My passion always stayed the same about anatomy, biomechanics, physiology, but my end job changed and it became a master saddler. After 3 years journeyman and 5 years apprentice, and then become a journeyman, and then from there went to masters. It was funny that never were there talk about Saddlefit through the whole time while I went to the school, master school. It was always answered by saying, do it the way I told you, because it was always done like that. But as we've seen, the sports has changed tremendously. I'm not just talking about eventing, jumping, I'm talking about all kinds of discipline in the Western world as well as in the English riding world. So we also seen the breed has changed tremendously. Just like what people did with the German Shepherd, I feel the breed has done not a good service to the animal, because we see in long-legged horses now, short backs, long necks, and which gives my working area, the saddle support area where the saddle is supposed to sit, a little challenge. Experience it myself as a competitor by surrounding myself with the team. I yet failed to be there for my best friend, my horse, because I didn't listen to his signs. Back in 78 to 81, veterinarians didn't have the technology they have today and didn't have so much emphasis on looking at the back as today. Yet the fault is strictly by myself, because I finally got the saddle, what everybody else has sponsored. I got the jacket, I got the hat. Yay, I'm in the club and I have this famous saddle and I don't have to pay for certain things. But my horse clearly went backwards to the fact that I even was pulled from the team. To wrap this up, it started off by really asking questions. Even though my dad always taught us, the person knows the how will follow the person knows the why. And I had the specialist back then, the specialists, all the body workers around the horse, from farriers to veterinarians, have also advanced by getting more technology. So now, here I am in Utrecht, horse on the treadmill in 1996. 15 years later, after my horse has passed, I see, wow, my saddle really did the damage to the horse. And then it became a snowball effect because the horse compensated. From that moment on, I became very skeptical and surrounded my people who follow the law of nature, who follow science, and stay away from opinions. Because as we know, everybody has an opinion, like everybody has a belly button, right? So in the end of the day, we are like so confused. So I created Saddlefit for Life to make sure nobody loses their best friend again by not trust the intuition and by not following the logic, and get hopefully not blinded anymore by opinions, by looking at the technology, science, what's available today.
I think what you just said there, Jochen, about the number of opinions that we're confronted with as horse owners in the horse world is so very true. And that's something a lot of horse owners are struggling with. You have opinions from the people around you, from barn mates, from trainers, or your equine professionals. And then you also have opinions on the internet on top of that. There are so many saddle fitting forums that people are, free to share information and comment on things. And I think it's just really tough as a horse owner who just wants to do right by their horse to know who and what to trust. But you're absolutely right. By following the science, we can actually cut through the noise.
I want to say something that is very important. Before I switched to private practice, I was at the University of Tennessee. I got to the ranks of clinical assistant professor on equine surgery. And that is all to say that I deeply believe in education. I think that proper education solves a lot of problems. And on and off, I was linked to the university for 15 years. And every other week, and sometimes twice a week, I repeat the same sentence. more mistakes are made because of the things that you don't see than because of the things that you don't know. And I'm going to repeat it because that's one of my cores, right? More mistakes are made because of the things that you don't see than because of the things that you don't know. And I cannot find a more better time to share with you something that you say. Unlike other parts of the body, right? The horse will pull through pain for years and then will perform even through that pain. The example is if the horse has a foot abscess, the horse doesn't move. End of the story. You have a bow tendon, the horse is in pain, the horse doesn't move. The amount of horses that I see with back pain, okay, and competing at competing, it doesn't matter the level to me really, they're competing. It's staggering. And when you ask the professional, one thing that comes to education is back pain does not get better with time. Back pain does not get better with time. You need to have an intervention, whether medical, surgical, therapeutic. But I agree with you, back pain does not get better with time. Any form of back pain. And yet our horses keep giving us the 110% pushing through that pain.
Jochen, you have unfortunately experienced losing your horse to the consequences of an ill-fitting saddle, which I'm sure many of our viewers can relate to. I'd be interested to know from you, Dr. Castro, what are the most common injuries or dysfunctions that you see in everyday practice that you believe are connected to saddle fit? What do those long-term physical consequences look like by the time they get to your clinic?
By the time that the horse gets to my exam room, okay, and is presented for back pain, there's multiple things that have been going on that cause that back pain, right? Including improper trimming and shoeing, for example. Now, the answer, Julia, is depends on the breed. But I do see a lot of problems with, I call it caudal withers pain. And then it's undue pressure on the withers that makes the horse unable to move freely. The second most common thing, whether it's cause or effect, it's the infamous kissing spines. And then in some cases, I believe the sacroiliac pain could be related to ill-fitting saddles. In some cases, not in always. No, I am very fortunate. I am very fortunate that I see a lot of breeds and a lot of disciplines. And some of them come with very, very expensive and fancy custom-made saddles without the understanding that the horse's body is going to change. So what it fit 6 months ago may not necessarily be adequate today.
I want to just briefly add a little bit of context here to what Dr. Castro just mentioned about custom-made saddles and that oftentimes they don't fit long-term. I think this is a very common misconception in the horse world that custom saddles should fit the horse's back because after all, they were custom made specifically for that particular horse. But what that whole concept kind of neglects to realize is the fact that horses change physically throughout their lifetime. And that change, those physical changes that we see, go well beyond physical maturity alone. The horse is going to continue undergoing physical changes. So back to the custom-made saddles and why they don't fit long-term, because ideally we are training to change our horse's top line and we're training to improve the muscling on our horse's backs. But if anything changes in that horse's training routine, in their nutrition, in the footing, in their farriery, anything at all, then muscular changes are going to occur. And unfortunately, most of the time, custom-made saddles do not necessarily mean that they are also adjustable. So ideally, if you're looking for a saddle, we are looking for adjustability. You need a saddle that is adjustable both in the width and the angle of the tree, that is adjustable in the flocking, that is adjustable in the gullet channel, and a number of different factors to make sure that we can have that saddle change as the horse changes. So custom-made saddle does not necessarily mean long-term good fit. Now, in some cases, maybe a custom-made saddle fits that horse long term, but if you look at the horse's top line, often it's atrophied. So if we have a saddle that is fit to a fit philosophy that actually suppresses development of the top line and causes muscle atrophy, then we can, the saddle doesn't technically fit, but nothing about the fit ever changes because the muscle is completely deprived of any ability to develop in a positive way. All right, with that little interjection, let's head back into the episode.
But I cannot make anybody upset because of that, because immediately somebody has to be responsible for that. So, well, I spent X amount of dollars on this saddle and you're telling me it doesn't work. And say, no, it worked when it was fit. It doesn't work when it's right now. I see more the opposite. Horses have proper saddles and then they become painful in their back, but that's because of other issues that happen because of training and age, and especially the breed. The breed is something that plays a factor here. But because it's something that you cannot touch or see, it doesn't mean it's not there. That's the problem that I see with back pain. And to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't start studying about back pain until I started studying acupuncture. So my love for back pain only comes in 2015 when I started studying acupuncture, and the so-called trigger points start appearing. That means more than something. When I went to vet school, it was very straightforward. Horses that have back pain, you have to inject the hocks. End of the story. Now, right, it was very simple, right? The horse hurts here, you inject the hocks. I do believe that the opposite is also true. Some horse can hurt their hocks and feet and stifles because of back pain and poor saddle. But I have a question for you, actually. So one of the things that it's in my mind is, why do we need a saddle, right? I mean, that is the big question, and I'm going to use this one as an example. I am not an accomplished rider as you are, but I'm a avid rider, and I look myself and say, what happens with that 7-year-old that will go to the farm and just in the horse, and the saddle was an inconvenience to me? Right? And now this is the same person that puts sunscreens and wears a helmet. And like any of my clients, I have gone through several saddles trying to find the perfect saddle. But what am I looking for? Why do we need a saddle in the first place? That's, I think, the clients should ask the same question.
Excellent question. When I wrote my first book, I asked several experts to write a chapter because I feel like if I'm a farrier, I can explain better why it's so important to have proper feet and how that shows up through the back. So when I asked the saddle historian, he says, I'm over 80 years old. I'm the youngest of this club in Europe. And in fact, it's over thousands of years. There was this development phase, and we're trying to optimize the relation between man, horse, and saddle. So if we go back to the actual reason of why we have saddles now, it's mainly comes back then because of same thing what you see in Kentucky. When you go to the horse museum, you see when the Europeans came over and fought the natives, all natives were bareback. Why did the natives 50 years later all had saddles? Why didn't they stay bareback? Because it comes out of the warfare. We use the horses to conquer the land, to fight wars. And when I shoot bow and arrow and I sit on the horse's back like that, boppity 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 bop, and trying to hit the target, very difficult. If I stand in my stirrup leathers, very easy. But what we also noticed, why is the horse so much faster and easier to my leg? And why is the horse has more energy and lasting? It comes very simple down to pounds per square inch. And more than ever we need a saddle. More than ever we need a saddle because 90% of all riders are women. 90% of riders in English are women. 75 in Western, 95 in English. So why is that so important? Because if I going to put a rider bareback on a horse, a guy for example, he will sit where the horse's basis withers is. I don't want to go too much into history when Caprilli invented the two-point point, but we can pretty much see all bullfighters, all rodeo riders, all bareback riders will sit on this, we call it the sweet spot, right at the base of the withers. Nobody sits on top of the neck or on top of the high point or in the middle of the back. Very unstable. So when I listen to experts who are going to a riding school, which is over 400 years old in Spain, and I see the Spanish riding school, people says why I need to get my center balance over the horse's center balance. I need to do that in order to come at the moment of impact. The back goes up and down, up and down. I need to be coming into the horse's back with the pliable seat. In other words, when I sit on my seat bones, I need to be able to move back and forth to absorb that horse's back. Okay, if I have a high pubic symphysis with high pubic branches and I sit at the base of the withers, I can do it because I shuffle my parts left or right. This is very level. If, however, 90% of my riders have more lordosis, more forward tilt in the pelvis, the pubic branches flat, pubic bone very low, but here comes the kicker. Even though it hits the pubic bone first, now she falls back, she's into a slouch position. Now she sits, pardon the pun, on her crotch, on her soft parts. Not like the guys can push their parts left or right. It's impossible. So she needs to roll even more. You will never ever see a bareback rider sit like it's been taught for over 400 years to this day with the pliable seat for two reasons. Number one, I just showed you. In saddle making, we even put a withers into the seat. So we create a crotch divider for the male rider. Because no guy, no male can ride hitting their parts. Impossible. Right? So we feint. On the horse bareback, easy, because the spinal processes are always higher, right? We know that, where the back muscle, where my seat bones sit in. So the bones come up into my crotch, divide my parts. Perfect. Second reason why I cannot be as soft in the impact to the horse's back, never mind about weight-bearing surface, okay? Let's say I'm a light, small person, which the majority of riders are not anymore. But let's go with that example. The fact is, the horse's body is always wider than the rider's pelvis. And if your pelvis is wider than the horse's rib cage, you shouldn't ride that type of horse. You're probably too big for that small horse. So where I'm going with this is, if I want to get, as a guy, shoulder, hips, and heels one line without having my hip pop out, I need to understand, so close I sit to the horse, so further my thighs want to turn out. Sure, I can say, hey, I'm going to rotate my kneecaps out, my toes out. Perfect. Now, if you ride without stirrup leathers, yes, the only thing what speaks now against it is that like the natives in North America, like you see in the I have a brain fart here. In the museum, the toes and knees are out. If they are forward, it's going to hurt your hips. You cannot sit in the soft alignment and use your back as a shock absorption. The second you have stirrup leathers or treeless saddles, you will torque your knee. Now, I'm not a chiropractor, or I'm not a gynecologist or a medical doctor who can argue with you or explain in detail why it's really bad when you squat that you don't bend over the direction of your foot. Probably not so good for your patella or for your meniscus. My answer to your question, why do we need a saddle? To put today's rider over the center balance of the horse while allowing them to become soft with a pliable seat and stay away from the spinal nerves and from the wither area. But, here comes the big but. you're the first person who says the horse doesn't change. Why am I making custom saddles for a horse? What changes? Sorry, you did say the horse changes. So most people who train horses, or even don't train horses, the horse changes all the time, right? So if you have a saddle that cannot be changed, you're constantly buying new saddles, or you're creating massive problems. Sorry, Dr. Castro, was a long answer to your question.
I want to show you something that, since you mentioned that, so this is the picture of the famous Lexington horse at the Kentucky Horse Park. And I have been there multiple times, and I was, looking what it means to this horse, and then my eyes got there. And then actually this horse has kissing spines, okay? And this is in the, second half of the 1800s. But what you are saying, and trying to understand the anatomy of what happens on these cases, it comes to this is my analogy of the horse. So there are two types of breeches. One is a rigid breeches, like this one in the south of France, and then you have a hanging breech, which is like the Golden Gate, okay? And then this is how I explain clients, you have all these muscles and nerves over here, but I want to give the idea to the hanging bridge because this is very, very important. These two parts over here are the hinges of the bridge, okay? So the hinges of the bridge in the horse, specifically in the horse right now, I consider the horse entire back from the poll all the way to the tail. So the neck, it is a hanging bridge, but we're going to leave the neck aside. Then you have the middle part, that is a rigid bridge. Let's put it, people may argue one vertebra going forward, but let's say that that goes from T1 to T15, T16, okay? So if you go from T1 to T15, those are the hinges. And then you have the second hinge that go from there to the SI area, okay? That over there becomes a hanging bridge. So now you have two stressors, which for all intended purposes is going to be T15, two vertebrae below where the girth should be placed. So when you have the back has 8 different possibilities. It can go up and down, it can go side to side, it can go front to back, and it can do rotational forces. Well, the vast majority of the stressors are going to be in T15, 13, 14, 16, true, but the vast majority of the surgeries are right there because that is the part with the vast majority of stress. If the saddle is not properly fit, there is where the rider is going to go up and down, putting the vast majority of the pain where it shouldn't go. So if the back normally is here and you put the saddle, now the back goes like that, the horse is going to go flat. Now we put a rider, it goes like that, the horse is going to put it like that. And then when you start bouncing up and down, the end result of that is the horse unable to engage behind. The horse cannot really engage and bring power back because at that point start bouncing instead of doing this rocking motion, right? So if the saddle is not properly fit, at that point, you just create a chronic problem. The end result could be kissing spine, but to me the problem starts far, far, far from there. I have also learned there's a very distinctive back pain, which is on the left side, right behind, right past the last rib, right in the flank. It's a classical point. So I started investigating why so many horses suffer from pain just on the left side of that area. And it was very interesting. My conclusion, this when I was at the university, actually it's common sense if you think about it, is riders are not using a mounting block. So you have the perfect horse, the perfect saddle fit, everything is perfect, but you don't use a mounting block. You get on the horse, and then when you get on the horse, and I see this a lot in Spanish riders and bullfighters, the first thing that they do is they readjust. Unfortunately, it takes about a little fall of, could be a skin, could be saddle pad, about 4 fingers from dorsal midline. That creates an extra pressure that never goes away during the exercise. And then horses are notorious for getting pain over that. And the problem is easily solved by getting onto a mountain block. So we don't have to go into deep, kissing spine arthritis. The problems could be much simpler, yet the effect is, at the end of the day, is poor performance.
I remember when I grew up in Germany, it was called, "Oh, you're not a real rider if you can't get from the ground on the horse." We had no mounting blocks. Now you go to Europe, everybody has a mounting block. Unfortunately, it means, when I say everybody, it's not really in every barn. You see people still mounting from the ground. So when I taught saddle fitting, in Germany to an osteopath school, they are big on, the humans are most of the time right-handed, and they have their appendix on the right, so does the horse. The horse's eye is left dominant, and we also have sometimes very hard to detect transitional vertebrae. And we have, like one of your colleagues, he's passed away now, but he lived in North Carolina, Dr. Kerry Ridgway. He talked about the high-low heel syndrome and how that affects on the shoulder. You mentioned in the beginning of our talk the problem or the immense amount of pressure on the withers. And there is metal in the horse's mouth and metal on the horse's feet. Sure, you can ride with a halter. Sure, you could go treeless. But let's say if you have a horse what is sitting with a bridle, and you have a horse what is short, and you have a saddle what has most likely a metal on its back, that metal is stronger than any other part in the saddle. That doesn't give. And when the saddle gets girthed on top, that metal comes down like a nutcracker. Like if you think about a walnut and you take a nutcracker, that's how we open it, right? Now you put the rider on top. And then the University of Davis there took they took a spine of the horse and they hold it with two people, says loaded, and not loaded, loaded. And you could see how the spinal process came closer. And I'm glad you were mentioning, I'm so happy you mentioned that kissing spine, yes, but there's other small problem what leads towards it. And it drives me absolutely crazy when I see saddle fitting schools or saddle fitters who say, oh, you need to flock your saddle. The analogy I always give is, if you have a bed where you sleep on every night and the mattress is so bad and somebody says, well, yeah, your bed sheets are not nice and smooth and they tighten the bed sheets, the second you sit in the bed, you fall into this damn mattress. Same with the flocking. The little flocking, what people do, correctly or incorrectly, material doesn't matter. Okay, what goes in here, yes, it is important. But if the tree doesn't have the basic function, which is follow the old army Western packing saddles. I'm going to show you behind me here. Let me see if I can drop this. There's a little saddle stand. And that saddle stand here has the withers, the wither cup, cartilage, shoulder blade, spine. You talked about T15, and then most saddlers talk about, oh, the saddle can go all the way to T18, and then we have the lumbar area. When I put a Western saddle on here, it covers most of the time, it leaves the spine away, the front flares up, the back flares up. It doesn't have these long bars on to distribute pressure. It has the bars, hence the word flare up where you put your gun, your water, your ropes, flare up in the back where you put your kitchen, your backpacks, blah, blah, blah. The weight for thousands of years has been focused to put on here while not pushing on the spine. Watch this. It was actually Dr. Weishaupt from the University of Zurich. He says the modern trees cripple today's horses. So when you look, if this is where the rider sits, most of the saddle with the stirrup bar, if you have a stirrup bar here, where you stand on with or without mounting block, all the pressure is here, then in the back, nothing in the middle. So the idea of, like I said earlier, to distribute the pressure so the horse lasts longer goes to the waist side. Why? Because rather than sitting bareback, close contact to the horse, in the center of the balance point, it's kind of putting all the pressure here where the shoulder rotates and needs to come through, pinches maybe the wither cup, and put axis pressure behind T15, exactly what you just said. You know, so we put all the pressure here, it loses the swing. So what is the solution? The solution is to have a bed mattress where the human has even support. The solution is panels, okay, in English saddles, what are not squishy like a sock, what have body to it, right? I can't squish this together. So we have the ability as saddle makers these days to get other materials. It doesn't have to be fiberglass or wood. It could be thin material, but is flexible, but it disperses the weight. So when the panel sits on here, hopefully with that front metal part following the scapular shape backwards, like all Army or Western saddles are there, you wouldn't believe how many saddles point that metal forward. This is from Dr. Catalina Thiersen. She practiced and she's a surgeon too, and she works in many other continents. She's now resided in South Africa. It bothers my mind. And that's why we at Saddlefit for Life want to surround ourselves with people such as yourself who see the problem in the practice, veterinarians who still teach at university, like Dr. Michael Weishaupt, who says the function of the today's trees, which go narrow and narrow, it's a problem. So what is the solution? The solution, if you get a basic understanding, you don't have to be a professor, but get a basic understanding of anatomy, biomechanics, physiology, and then surround yourself with the experts. I will never shoe my own horse or trim my horse just because I have basic understanding. I will find somebody who I can ask the intelligent question.
Oh, and that goes with something else that I see, but that's a disease of the modern world. People want a quick fix instead of spending time understanding why the problem is. You know, the solution of a horse that's too fast is a harder bit, you know. I keep telling this to my clients. You say, I hear this often say, Dr. Castro, you did this to my horse and my horse is running faster. No, no. My job, I cannot make a horse run faster or jump higher. That nor a saddle power, not a bit. I can. I wish I had that power. But I tell you how I see myself in this puzzle. If I have a horse that first of all is pain-free, okay, then the trainer can train that horse, and the horse can express to the best of its abilities what the horse is made to be. And I don't think that that is a clear understanding between riders, trainers, veterinarians, farriers, saddle feeders, body workers. I believe me, I wish I can tell you horses run faster because I do acupuncture. That's not even in my surgeon's ego. I can say that. But the solution to the problem is not a new saddle pad, a new saddle. It's trying to understand why we create the problem and then adjust to that. And I think that once you figure that one out, everything comes actually really easy and flows. I am fascinated by the fact that we're trying to make an animal designed to go fast, as fast as they can in a straight line for a short distance. We're trying to make them go as slow as possibly they can in a circle. You know, after all, that's what we're trying to do. If I was a horse, nobody will ride me. I can assure you that. But why not to make this fantastic creature just to move better? And I think that with a different word, I want to say the same thing. For me, the key word here is balance. To me, the key word of this is balance or equilibrium. But it's not just the horse, it's the horse, the saddle, and the rider. All three things have to work together. Independently, it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Yeah, it's easy to finger point, and the horse focuses most of the time on one pain area, and then all of a sudden, same with me, if I have elbow area and pain, and this is happy now, all of a sudden says, now I have shoulder area pain because you fixed my elbow. No, that was less of an issue than this. So often it is, the saddle doesn't fit, this is where the horse is sore. Well, we need to look at all the angles. I always like to say the horses needs to be viewed as a bicycle with spokes. Each spoke in the bicycle is important. There's not one single spoke in a bicycle you said this is the most important spoke. They all have their jobs. So, and as we mentioned earlier, education is key, and this is, I think, Julia's main thing of this series. What we're going to do here is the circle of influence. We as manufacturers or as educators, I stepped away from just making saddles, because I find it's way better if people understand some basics so they can ask and challenge their saddle fitters or makers, how are you going to make my saddle fit? Why do I need a saddle tree? And how can I ride my horse when he's now, I got a saddle when he's 4, now he's 7. Obviously he's not the same horse anymore, and I ride a lot and I compete and I want a nice top line. I got the nice top line, the horse not even close, I can see it in the picture. How can I have a saddle what follows it? And it goes back to what's done for hundreds of years. The sergeant told the soldier, the billets. How many people have no clue why we have on a jumping saddle 3 or 4 billets? Most people don't know on the Western saddle or on certain army saddles why you can change the rigging left side versus the right side. Most people have no idea how to use the billets correctly. That's the first thing the soldier learned from the sergeant. Second, they looked at the end of the mane, they looked at the ring of lights. I just put that ring off here on this little horse here, the ring of lights. So when you look at the horse's flank, you see from the stifle up, the hair grows up, and then it goes forward, and then from the trunk, it goes the other direction. So when a horse gets reined on it, you see how the rein goes down. They called it in the army times the rein line. So what did the soldier need to know? Fold your blanket between the rein line and the end of the mane. Not on top of the mane or shoulder or in the lumbar section. So back then, we were also a little bit more controlled who was allowed to ride. I am 6'3", 195 pounds. With my clothes and my saddle, I'm easily over 220 pounds. I'm way too tall and too heavy for a rider back in the old days. I would not want to make the cavalry. Horses were specific bred to pull around the Holland River, the Friesians, to pull the barges. Little Shetland ponies go in the mountains to pull out the coal. Certain horses were selected for certain disciplines, cavalry horses. And the cavalry saddle, which is in the Hall of Fame, the McClellan saddle, that was 200 years advanced back in their times. And they knew, if I take the crotch pressure of the rider, because that's where we did our patent on, if a guy gets too much pressure on their midsection, right, you lose your ability to perpetuate. You don't want that pressure. So bicycle industry adopted what was over 150 years old. So that saddle, not today, people don't ride 17 hours a day, sleep in their saddles. That's not happening anymore. They ride 1-2 hours. But the women who have no chance to ride in the saddle, like this is how most saddles looked. Okay? They had that peak in the crotch for the rider to not fall on their part. Most of the riders, and this goes back to what you were saying, okay? They have no clue that you can have a saddle with a hole in the crotch. For the women's pelvis, for the woman's part not to have voluntary impact, because what's the girl going to do? She's going to ride. She's not going to listen to oh, I'm going to finish my rehab. Gets crushed on the pubic symphysis first, and then what she's doing, she rolls back, and where's she sitting? Behind T15, and the whole vicious cycle goes. So that's why I always start with the quote, and thank you for mentioning that, Dr. Castro, because we all have to do our part. It's the rider and the horse and all the experts.
I have a question for you, because I am neither a trainer nor a competitive rider, but don't you think that a rider should spend more time with ground exercises before they put a saddle on the horse? I think that part of the problems that I see, it's because not the horse riding, or it's under saddle too soon, but I don't think that we take the time to develop the back is strong enough before we start asking the horse to do another movements. I do think that in other, I think that, well, I have this thing, and I'm going to let you answer, because it is fascinating to me. In any other sport, people warm up and cool down except equestrians. I never seen a rider warming up, stretching. We think in our minds that riding the horse is the exercise. And then I hear this one very frequently. I say, this horse is painful, L5 on the right. And then I hear this say, oh, me too. Obviously, I cannot ask the rider. Tell me about that, because among other things is medical information. But I'm not going to do this research, but I would like to know how many riders suffer from the same condition that the horse suffers. It's very common that I hear that. So I think that we should spend more time developing the back on the ground and off the ground before actually riding the horse. But I want to hear your opinion on that.
So I shared a picture here, okay, and in Germany we call the horse between 3 to 6 Remonte, a young horse what is not to be ridden every day. And an old soldier wrote a book, Hand, Sattel, Hand, hand, saddle, hand. You should work the horse from the ground twice as much as if you sit on it. One in the hand, then you ride, then in the hand. So the groundwork we have barely ignored. No other sport, like you said, we warm up. And what we call riding sport, you don't see any other riding sport where people are utterly out of shape. Why were people meant to work on the ground much more? Tell you what, when you trot behind a horse, what is trotting, or long reining, or working from the ground, you are active. Okay? We used to have a saying is, Reiter merkt euch auf allen Wegen, reiten merkst du nur durchs Fegen. I said it in German because it's a riddle, and I'm going to translate it by saying, riders, you only will learn how to ride if you sweep the barn non-stop. And what you did by sweeping, you built incredible core muscles. A good rider has good core muscle. Many riders have no core muscles. The reason why Saddlefit for Life was invited to teach these courses at the German National Training Center is because Professor Meiners, who taught how a human body function in different disciplines, his wife was a rider, so he focused a lot in how the human works on a horse. He wrote 25 books. He introduced exercises to the riders because they don't do them. So if you come there, who sit all day in your office, you drive an hour to your horse, or half an hour, you sit, have this posture, and all of a sudden you're supposed to be limber. So if you're a little kid, maybe, right? But the majority of the adults are getting stiffer as the older we get. So the exercise is key, and we surround ourselves with body workers, not just with Professor Meiners, and it's actually coming more and more aware. But to go back to what you were saying, we also need to follow the money, which means look at the racing industry, look what they do with the thoroughbreds, look what they do with the Western world. They start riding them when they're 1.5 years, 2 years to compete. At 20 months, the horses develop to here. The scapular is not even developed until they're 4, fully developed, I should say. and the 32 growth capsules are not done until the horse's spine. So it's a long-winded answer, but for our viewers, I wanted to make sure that this maturity timeline, which is like, you know it, I'm not teaching that to the prior here, but we have forgotten why our ancestors have barely ridden a horse until he was 6 years old.
When I was a kid, my grandfather used to say that a horse lifespan is usually 20 years old. So basically, when the horse turned 15, you just retire it to a field and wait for him to pass away, right? One thing that my profession has done in one generation is that we have almost doubled the lifespan of a horse. I am doing pre-purchase evaluations here at the hospital, me and my associates, on horses that are 15, 16, 17, with the intention of the horse being active, competing for another 5 or 7 years. And I say, my grandfather will be alive. He will not believe that you are riding a horse that's 24 or 25 years old. So we have made a lot of progresses in one area. I do believe that we forget that horses are biological entities that change by the day, and then we want to make them function like a car or a motorcycle. You know, I do believe that they are very noble. They let us ride them to begin with, and ask them to do things that naturally they will not. I never seen a horse cantering in circles in the morning making laps. I'm yet to see that a horse warming up, and yet they do it. So it is important to work for the horse, because I don't care if you're going to the Olympics, the World Championships, or like me, you're a back rider, backyard rider every other weekend when I have time. Nothing trumps the first 10 seconds on the saddle on a horse. Nothing. That's a feeling that everybody thrives. So why not to make it better for everybody? And I do believe that teamwork is fundamental. Veterinarians cannot be all. We cannot be chiropractors, acupuncturists, dentists, saddle feeders. I ask for some respect from paraprofessionals. They are invading our territory. And then I do see why clients can be lured to those things, because they are looking for an answer. Every single client that I have here, every single one is searching for knowledge. All of them. So one of the things that we do here is teaching all the time, but for the betterment of the horse. And I'm going to say another saying that helps really a lot is, in the absence of diagnosis, medicine is poison, surgery is trauma, and alternative medicine is witchcraft. So if you put the perfect saddle but you don't find the proper diagnosis, then the saddle feeder, saddle maker is guilty. And then the farrier is guilty, and then the veterinarian is guilty, and then you go from one place to another. But we also have to do a self-reflection. It's my horse capable to do what I am asking him to do, and I am able to provide that comfort for him. And the other thing that I have to say, professionally speaking, there are two areas that in the last 10 years have become impossible to keep up with. One is nutrition, right? You want to feed your horse better, and then you get the catalog, and after the 4th page, you're looking at the picture to say how you want your horse to look at, but you don't understand everything is there, and there's not really a good guide what to feed your horse. And then it's not just saddle. Now you have the saddle pad, the girth, the bit, the headgear. It has become impossible to say, because the question is, what do you recommend? I have no idea nowadays. I have no idea, because there's too much information out there without proper scientific testing. If you have a hammer in your hand, everything looks like a nail, right? I mean, if you sell.
And this is why I went in the beginning, and this is Julia's intention, and Julia is not only a great saddle fitter, but she is mainly a great rider, but also passionate educator. So when we educate, we give the power. What my instructor always says, it takes 3 human lives to learn everything about the horse. And that was before the technology came in, and heart monitors, gait analysis, etc. Okay, so it is our duty as a rider to pass on to our sons and daughters and friends what we learned. But of course we get influence through this here, mighty power. So sometimes it's easier to take an Advil than to drink more water if you have any. Right? Like you mentioned it earlier, the easier fix. We went completely away from what our ancestors knew, stay off the spine, to saddles, which are very, very narrow in the front, in the back, were just meant to snap onto the spinal processes. Nicknamed closed fit or clothespin fit. So I think through conversations such as this, to people who say, I don't know what to look for it, that's what Saddle Fit for Life is all about. We want to make sure you cannot fit the saddle and expect your horse has good shoes. I mean, I said it like that, but sometimes people think this is it. First, we educate the consumer because of the stinking, I'm sorry to use the word stinking, but it is really annoying me, the saddle fit assumption. We need to be very clear, what saddle fit are we talking about? Do you talk saddle fitting from a manufacturer point of view or from a retailer? They sell you a saddle where they have the highest profit margin on, says, this looks awesome on your horse. And you know what? I throw that saddle pad in. Oh, they're the expert. I guess it fitted. Or are you getting your saddle fit by a saddle fitter or trainer or rider who says, oh, my saddle goes to the right, keeps going to the right. So they adjust the saddle. It doesn't go to the right anymore, but they created 5 more problems. What about fitting the saddle from the horse's point of view? So it doesn't create 5 more problems, and you named that keyword already. Balance. What about putting these two beings together and the interface, the saddle, stays all the horse's movements, if it's the shoulder or after T15, or pinching any kind of sensitive area on the horse's back or spines or nerves.
But it's a team effort. It's a team effort. When horses come to me for, let's say specifically kissing spine surgery, which I do it, right? The very first thing that I say is, number one, the objective is to have a pain-free horse so you can train and develop back pain. So you're not coming to me to the technical part. Let me rephrase that. I'm not doing the surgery because of the technical part. That's not what I believe I'm doing the surgery. I believe something else. But the first thing that I say is you need to find a saddle fitter, because it doesn't matter how great the surgery goes. If we don't have a proper rehab, surgery is not going to be effective. And then if you don't have a proper saddle, not necessarily because it was bad before, not necessarily, but if you don't address those problems, we're going to go back to the first place, in which case the surgery fails. Now the surgery didn't fail. It's just multiple components that goes with that to make the horse. And at the same time, when all those things align, yesterday I have a case that I did surgery back in April. You see the smiles on their faces, the clients, when we check the horse and the horse doesn't move and the horse is moving better and riding better, and I personally see a really nice top line, that's the kind of personal satisfaction that I go for. I don't care what they do with the horse, really. Whether they go to the Olympics or they go to regional, it's not my job to judge which one is better or not. My job is to provide a horse that is happy. In the words of double Olympic gold medalist, he says something that is pretty wise. I asked him, how long do you train? How long do you ride the horse every day? I said, I don't have a set time. And he said, why not? And he said, because riding has to be therapeutic for the horse and the rider. And you cannot put that one in 15 minutes or in 45 minutes, whatever the horse needs.
That's right.
I guess that's why he is a double gold medalist.
Exactly. Very, very, very well said.
Yeah.
Oh, it was very interesting to hear all these aspects, and as I said, we at Saddle Fit for Life got away from the word saddle fitter, even though we talk about saddle fitting. It was advised when I worked together with veterinarian like Dr. Gerd Heuschmann in Germany and the professor of miners who work with the riders. You should stay away, because saddle fitters don't have a good reputation in Germany. They come in and sell you a saddle. And I then, as a trainer, have to deal with that. right? So and then after a while the horse changed and it doesn't fit anymore. And then they want to sell you another saddle. Who has that much money? So we came up with the name, comes from the Greek, ergonomist, means measuring something three-dimensional. With your phone, the technology is so far you can measure the horse's back with easy measurements. You can even see it with your eyes. Okay, you see the horse every day, you can see a difference in the back. Customers don't, because they see they have only one horse. But if you go and visit your brother and then you all of a sudden see the horse, kid's grown, wow, look at that, the kids are much bigger. What I'm trying to say, you have different perceptive if you're always with the person or with the horse. So at Saddlefit for Life, we call it equine ergonomist. An equine ergonomist needs to see the horse on the lunge line first. Then they need to see what type of riding style and what type of saddle they do before we even look how we fit the saddle. And that is, I think, where we really push. And there on our evaluation sheet, we have a middle field. There's nothing wrong with the saddle. This is a deeper lying issue. I would ask my body worker, my vet, look at the shoeing. If I see somebody taking the reins, they pull the horse out of the barn, instantly sit down, crank the horse down, and then smack him on the back. See, horse doesn't go forward. Then I will maybe say, maybe you give me the name of your instructor. Maybe I want to talk to him. So that's what an equine ergonomist is. And sure, we talk about the saddle, but we wanted to go away because it has the too bad reputation in many countries, and as I said, too much different assumption what saddle fit really is. Julia.
Well, this has been an incredible episode. Thank you both so very much. Before we head off, I would like to ask each of you to just leave our viewers with something actionable. What is a piece of advice that you would like to share with our viewers that could, help them take better charge of their horse's health and well-being, especially with a focus on the horse's back and their musculoskeletal health?
Look at the entire horse. Look at the entire horse as a whole. And then from there, we can figure out what we can fix and what we cannot fix. But don't look for a magic wand that you put the new shoes and the horse moves better, put a new saddle and you ride better. Look at the entire horse and then clearly determine what are your objectives for this horse. You cannot ask a horse to fly. It's not designed to do that. But we push them to that limit, So look at the horse. Let's see what the main intended purpose is and see how we can make you achieve those goals and be realistic. But look at the entire horse, not just at one part of the horse. It's not the back, it's not the foot, it's not the eye, it's the entire horse. And remember, the most important part, the most expensive part of a horse is what's between the ears. That's truly what is valuable on a horse. If you don't look into that, then we go into the tie-down bits and the side reins and the tranquilizers. No, look at the entire horse. Let's look what's between those ears. Let's look at the age. Let's look at the maturity. And then we can go from there. I think that's what we have to look for. Pre-purchases are fundamental in the future of the profession, because clients want that help and we're here to help them to answer those questions, because as you say, they don't know what to look for, but yet they are searching for, and that is the part that is important. Clients are starving for knowledge. They just don't know what to look for. It's my job to educate them.
Yeah. I think sometimes, especially for the baby boomers, we see an immense amount of people who have never ridden as a young kid. They had no time or no money. Now you see a lot of people who have the time and the money and started riding. They forget very often that the wild horse normally walks around 20 miles and has the head down 17 hours to look for food and is constantly on the move. If we have the horse in captivity, we take a flight animal, it's not a predator, a flight animal, and in addition to look at the entire horse, also look how it's being captured. What's the environment? To come in the barn and the horse is like stressed out of the gills, the whole body, the whole attitude, starting, I don't want to get into myofascia, but everything. If we look at the way the rider rides the horse, the environment of the horse is, that's how it will adapt to the things we want to do with them. Olympics, pleasure rider, polo rider, jumper, eventer, racer, doesn't matter. And is about saddle fitting, and I really appreciate your input and your comments, especially you mentioned again for something what is so common yet often forgotten, simplicity, use a mounting block, right? Especially when it's back left, so often the problem. So I truly enjoyed our talk, and I can only encourage people to look into itself by surround yourself by the experts who can give you answers based on science and not based on opinions.
Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media. You can find us under Saddlefit for Life. If this conversation really resonated with you and you'd like to become an advocate for horses, helping us facilitate change in the equine industry through evidence-based practices, we'd love to connect with you. You can book a no-obligation discovery call with us using the link under this video. On the call, we're going to talk about your background with horses, your goals, and how our program can help you achieve those. Whether you're looking to start a career as an equine professional or to enhance an existing equine business, whether you're a body worker, a trainer, a vet, or any other equine professional, our programs are designed to support you every step of the way. Click the link below to book your call. We're excited to speak with you and explore how you can make a real impact for horses. Regardless of whether you take me up on that offer, make sure to check out the next episode of this series. Happy riding.